Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. Hey there, let me tell you about this insane situation that happened to me recently. So, I'm a teenage girl living with my grandparents. Life was pretty chill until one day my grandpa, the rock of our little family, passed away. It was tough losing him, but we stuck together and supported each other through the grief. I was working part-time at a local cafe, trying to make ends meet while balancing school and other responsibilities. One evening, after a long day at work, I came home exhausted, hoping to unwind and relax. But guess what? The moment I stepped through the door, I could sense something was off. My mom, who hadn't been the most reliable parent in the past, had been seeing this creepy boyfriend. Let's call him Bob for a few months. He always gave me the heebie-jeebies, and I couldn't stand being around him. But now, to my utter shock, she declared that Bob would be moving in with us. Rent-free. I mean, seriously, who does that? Mom didn't even have the decency to talk to me about it beforehand. Instead, she barked at me to prepare dinner for both of them like I was their personal chef. Hey, I just got back from work. Can't we talk about this later? I tried to reason with her, but she was hell, bent on making me cook. That's your job as a daughter, isn't it? I'm tired of your constant complaints. Bob is a good man, and you'll learn to live with it, she snapped back at me, making my blood boil. Yeah, right. Good man, my foot. Bob had always given me the creeps, and I couldn't stand thought of sharing a roof with him. But Mom was blinded, or perhaps just didn't care. She was always quick to prioritize her desires over anyone else's feelings. My grandparents, on the other hand, had always been my rock, my safe haven, and my emotional support. Losing Grandpa was a massive blow, and I wasn't ready to let go of Grandma's comforting presence in our lives. Yet here was Mom, barging in and turning our lives upside down. I couldn't bear the thought of my home turning into Bob's lair. I needed to take action. So, I mustered up all the courage I had and confronted Mom. You can't just expect me to accept this out of nowhere. We need to talk about this, and I deserve to have say in what happens in our home. But instead of a reasonable conversation, Mom exploded into a rage, accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. You never appreciated anything I did for you. Bob loves me, and he's here to stay whether you like it or not, she screamed, making my heart ache. Things escalated quickly from there. I tried calling my grandparents for help, but they were out of town visiting relatives, so I was on my own. Frustrated and desperate, I dialed 911, hoping the police could mediate the situation. When the cops arrived, the situation took a turn for the worse. My mom put on an act, pretending to be the innocent victim, and claimed that I was being rebellious and disrespectful. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like a bad soap opera unfolding right in front of me. As I tried to explain the real situation, Bob chimed in with a smirk. She's just a hormonal teenager. She'll get over it. His condescending tone made me see red, but I knew I had to keep my composure. The police officers listened to both sides of the story and quickly realized that something wasn't right. They saw through my mom's act and recognized the tension in the room. Sensing the urgency, they decided to take both of them into custody until things could be sorted out. As the officers handcuffed my mom and Bob, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that someone finally saw the truth, but sadness because it had come to this. I stood there watching them being led away, unable to comprehend the chaotic turn of events. After they were taken away, I sat alone in the house, surrounded by the silence. It was eerie, but also a newfound sense of peace settled over me. It was the first time in a long while that I felt safe and secure in my own home. In the following days, my grandparents returned, and we sat down to discuss what had happened. They were heartbroken to learn about the chaos I'd endured, but they assured me that things would get better. Together, we made a decision to seek legal help to ensure my safety and well-being. It's been a roller coaster journey since then, with court hearings, counseling sessions, and a lot of emotional healing. But I'm proud to say that I've come out stronger on the other side. My grandparents have been my pillars of support, and I'm grateful to have them in my life. This happened last October 1st, the morning of my daughter's wedding. Had I not been in a hurry to get to the venue, things may have played out differently. I will never know. I was there to buy distilled water for the steamer needed to steam her dress and the bridesmaids' dresses. Time was of the essence. I was patiently waiting in line with an elderly couple finishing up in front of me. The woman was in front of me. She was standing in front of the CC payment thingy, and the cart was after her. Her husband was at the end of the cart bagging groceries. The cashier mentioned she would bag his items, and he cheerfully replied he had done it for years for a living and didn't mind. His wife laughed and said he liked helping out. I was in line, as I mentioned, and I had my debit card ready in my hand. I smiled and chimed in on the conversation. I tend to talk with my hands, so as we were all chatting, I was waving my right hand in the air. My hand was visible the entire time. Suddenly, I'm shoved hard from behind. I was pushed into the little old lady, and she in turn shoved the cart into her husband. My first thought was that someone tripped and fell into me. I recovered and looked behind me to see this elderly man, hair sticking straight up, mask on below his nose, glaring at me while he slammed items onto the conveyor belt. The conversation went like this. Me, can I help you? EP, I shoved you because you shoved her, and I am not about to let you shove me, so I beat you to the punch. Ha ha! He is yelling this at me, pulling his mask down and leaning into my face. Idiot! I can feel myself getting hot all over. I don't like confrontation, but he actually hurt my shoulder. I have fibromyalgia, and a simple hug can be excruciating. Meanwhile, the old couple in front of me just book it out of there. I never got to apologize to the woman or her husband. Me, I didn't touch her. Meanwhile, the cashier is ignoring this and quietly rings up my distilled water. EP, I saw you shove her, so I beat you to the punch. You, people today are all the same. Then he gestures to my gallon of distilled water. Have you ever heard of a faucet? You're, what's wrong with the world, drinking fancy water when you can drink out of a hose. You are stupid. He kept yelling at me, but I just closed off and could hear the sound but no longer make out the words. I think I went into a mild shock. I wanted to scream at this man and defend myself, but at the same time, why should I defend why I'm buying a damn gallon of distilled water? He shoved me and had absolutely no right to. I thought maybe the cashier would say, "Hey, sir, settle down," or something. She said nothing. I was robotically swiping my debit card and just thinking, I have to get to my daughter. She is getting married today. I have to get to my daughter. She is waiting. I have to get to my daughter. I grabbed my water and made a hasty exit. As I was leaving, I heard him say to the cashier, "Where did you get that shirt? It's ugly. I have seen better shirts in the trash." "Do you know how stupid you look?" She replied, "I like this shirt. I'm ready for Halloween." It was a shirt with the upper part of a skeleton, ribs, sternum, etc. He just kept on, and she ignored him. It was then I realized this was a disturbed, possibly senile old guy. But still, I needed to get to my car. I was on the verge of tears, which happens when I get angry. I got to my car, locked the doors, and began to shake. Then I couldn't stop. I burst into tears and shook uncontrollably for about 5 minutes. That's when it hit me. I was assaulted. I was assaulted, and I did nothing. I froze. I was victimized, mildly, but I cannot imagine how women recover from more violent assaults, and I have a deep respect for those who can. My shoulder was on fire. Absolutely no employee in that store came to my defense. I drove to my daughter's venue, still in shock. After the wedding, hours later, I'm in the shower. My husband comes in, and I have a bruise the size of a tennis ball on my left shoulder area, he inquired. And when I explained, white-hot rage went through this man. My giant of a husband would have never allowed that man to do what he did. Had he been there, we most likely would have been delayed by police, so I'm grateful that didn't happen. I think about it all the time. I wish I had defended myself. I wish the cashier had called security. I wish I had not crawled inside myself and shut down the way I did. To anyone who has survived assault, you are brave. You matter. You did not deserve it. You are a survivor. Mine was a rough shove, and I still shake when I think about it. I posted last night about an encounter I'd had with a neckbeard who tapped me on the shoulder, asked me if I was single, and then flipped out when I said no. I mentioned that I dealt with Karen not 20 men before that and would post that story if folks were interested. So here it is. In my other post, I explained that I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a genetic disorder affecting collagen. Among many other symptoms, it tends to make people look significantly younger than we are. So although I'm 32, I'm often mistaken for being a teenager. I dress in a very goth punk style, which I'm sure probably adds to that. EDS often causes something called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which in simple terms means that being upright causes my heart rate to increase and my blood pressure to decrease, and the longer I'm standing, the worse it gets. If I'm standing for too long, I black out. I take medication that helps a lot, but I've had to stop taking it in order to get the Rona vaccine. So my heart rate and blood pressure are completely uncontrolled, ATM. I just arrived at my local shopping mall and got hit with a wave of dizziness, which is a surefire sign that I need to sit down before I fall down. There were 3 armchairs together for customers to use, and I sat down in one that had an abandoned, empty shopping trolley next to it. The other 2 seats were occupied. I checked my numbers with the blood pressure monitor I carry with me, and they were pretty bad. BP of 105, 68, and HR of 138 BPM. So I downed a few salt tablets and started scrolling through Reddit on my phone while I waited for things to improve. About 2 men later, the wild Karen appeared. Edit to add, Karen matched the stereotype in every conceivable way and looked to be 45-50 yo. She marched over and barked at me to get out of her seat, claiming she'd clearly left her trolley next to it to reserve it. I told her the seats are there for everyone's use and people leave empty trolleys all over the shopping center, so that really didn't mean anything. During previous disputes about seating, I've sometimes told people I couldn't move anyway because of my BPHR condition. But it's never seemed to help the situation, and is none of their business, so I don't tend to mention it unless it's genuinely necessary. Karen, hand on hip, said she didn't ask for my idiot opinions and that when an adult tells me to jump, the only acceptable response is how high. I laughed and said, "Lady, I'm 32 years old and I don't answer to you." "Leave me the hell alone," she scoffed and said, "Bullshit. Don't you dare lie to me." "Where the bloody hell are your parents?" I said that's none of her damn business and to stop harassing me, because I'm not moving. As I was saying this, an older man vacated one of the other armchairs with a groan and an eye roll. You and me both made. So I gestured to it and said, "There you go, Karen. There's a free seat right there. Happy now?" Karen folded her arms and, with an entirely misplaced air of superiority, said, "That's your seat. This one is mine, and you are going to move, young lady." Entirely done with her shit, I laughed and said a simple no, going back to my phone. At this point, she pretty much lost it. She shouted, "Get your fat arse out of my effing chair," and kicked the side of the seat hard enough to make me jump. As I responded with a stunned, "Wow, you're legitimately crazy, aren't you?" a member of the cleaning staff took notice and came over. She told Karen to calm down and asked me if I needed her to call security. I was going to say yes, please, but Karen jumped in and snapped, "Please do. And then to me, I would love to see security drag you out by your ear." He must have been nearby because a security guard quickly appeared and asked me what the problem was. Of course, Karen again jumped in and started telling him that this stroppy little brat had pushed her out of her seat and stolen it from her and how it was clearly hers, because that's my trolley, right there. The security guard turned to me and asked if that was what had happened. I said, actually, like I told her, I'm 32 years old and she didn't show up until after I'd sat down. She said she'd reserved the seat, and I told her that's not how it works. She's been harassing me to get me to move, and your colleague here saw her shouting and kicking the chair. Karen gasped and with an accusational pointed finger shouted, "You lying little witch!" But the cleaner backed me up. The security guard calmly told Karen that she can't claim or reserve seats she's not using, and that if she wanted to sit down, there were now 2 free seats right there. The third person had now also left. Karen went red in the face and barked back, "Listen here, you will make her move, or I will be having words with your manager." The security guard sighed and told Karen that she had 2 options. Either she could walk away now, leave me alone and be allowed to get on with her day, or he would be escorting her out of the shopping mall. Surprisingly, Karen actually went with a third option. She scoffed and stammered and eventually opted to shout about how effing believable this all was, and that she was going to the center management's office to get the security guard and the cleaner fired right damn now, and stormed off, without her empty trolley, of course. The security guard let her leave, and unfortunately, I don't know what happened with her after that point. The security guard apologized to me for her behavior, and I told him it wasn't his fault and that I was sorry he and the cleaner had to deal with shit like that, too. He excused himself, saying he should probably follow her to make sure she made it to the center manager's office without any further incidents along the way. And I chatted with the cleaner a bit about how ridiculous and childish people can be. She told me this was far from the worst or weirdest she'd seen and that I wouldn't believe the shit some people do, but didn't elaborate. A plus side was that the whole situation had aided in increasing my blood pressure, so I sat there for about another 10 minutes to let my heart rate level out and was then able to get up and carry on with my day. If I see that security guard while I'm at the shops this afternoon, I'll be sure to ask him what happened and update this post. So, a little background. I am a 17-year-old male with gender dysphoria. I don't know if I'm transgender or not, which means I dress in a way that makes me look relatively feminine, meaning I wear oversized hoodie because I'm too uncomfortable wearing dresses. I'm also gay. Now for the actual story. This happened to me yesterday when I was down in town getting food. I was out of school for the day and was hungry, so I decided to walk to town to get some barbecue. I'm waiting in line to order my food when a Karen walks in. And I mean Karen, she had the haircut, the oversized sunglasses, the obviously fake earrings, and the terrible fake tan. So I'm ordering my food when I hear Karen scoff talking about how long the line was. There was like 2 people in front of her, and I ignore her. I finish ordering my food and go sit at one of the nearby tables to wait for it to get made, so I pull out my phone to pass the time. The Karen sees me pull out my phone and sees that my lock screen is a picture of my crush. He knows about the picture, he made it for me, and thinks nothing of it. She later comes up to me and asks me if the person in my picture was my boyfriend. I respond with a no, which is when she freaks out. I have a naturally deep voice while looking like a girl. This lady freaks out about this, calling me a tranny, transgender slur, and a faggot. The manager working in the back overhears this and comes out to see what was going on. The Karen sees the manager coming over and runs over to him and tells him to kick me out of the store. The manager asks her why she wants me out, and she says I'm threatening and harassing her. The manager comes over to me, asks me for my side, and I tell him what was going on. The manager goes back to Karen and tells her that he won't be kicking me out. Karen freaks out about this and tries to take matters into her own hands by physically grabbing me and dragging me out. I pull my arm out of her grasp, and she effing slaps me. I am the type of person to keep a knife on me for self-defense, so I pull it out. There's no problem with this because I am a minor and she assaulted me. She freaks out when she sees the knife and calls the police on me. The police arrive 10 minutes later, and Karen runs over and tells them that I pulled a knife on her and tried to mug her. The cops come over to me and get them my side of the story, which I tell them all while Karen keeps saying that I'm lying. The cops ask the manager, who says they could check the security footage, and Karen's goes ghost white. So in the end, Karen got arrested for assault of a minor and was banned from the store just because she couldn't deal with me having long hair and wearing an oversized hoodie. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. This was at the beginning of the pandemic, just before countries were beginning their lockdowns. The wife and I were visiting our families in our country of birth and had to rush back to our home country. The airline had canceled our pre-booked flights and rerouted us via 3 other flights across various countries. This also meant that the seats we'd booked wouldn't be the ones we'd be getting. To say it was a nightmare of a journey wouldn't be an exaggeration. While the first flight was barely 3 hours, the second flight was 9 hours of being wedged between people in the center row after a 10-hour layover. With just another 15 hours until we reached home, 5-hour layover plus the final 10-hour flight, we tried our best to just suck it up in spite of not having slept for over a day. Our luck turned for the better on the final flight as we were assigned a window and middle seating configuration was 343. Upon boarding, we realized that the aisle seat beside mine was unoccupied. Overjoyed, I took the aisle seat while my wife took the window seat. We were barely able to keep our eyes open at this point, and were looking forward to getting some sleep at last. All was going well until a mom boarded with 2 kids, make 11, F7, in Tampa. We'd seen them at the airport and could tell this was their only flight, or at least their first. They were assigned the middle row of 4 seats between the 3 of them, just a few rows ahead of us. While putting their bags into the overhead bins, the mom was scanning other seats and spotted the empty one between my wife and I. There was no way in hell either my wife or I were going to be seated next to some other person's child. Once the doors were closed and we were waiting to start the taxi stage, her son started loudly whining about wanting a window seat. In no time, the little brat starts crying and demanding a window seat. The passengers around them were clearly annoyed at listening to a freaking 11-year-old throw a tantrum, but were way too decent to say anything. Instead of telling her child to shut the F up, the mother encourages the son to go ask passengers if they'd be willing to give up their seat, while turning around and looking at my wife and me. I woke my wife up to inform her of what to expect and told her to stand her ground if the lady asked. When the flight crew came by to check our seatbelts, they saw the woman standing up and told her to sit down and buckle up. We noticed her trying to say something to the attendant but could hear what was being said. Once up in the air and the seatbelt signs were turned off, the mother once again stood up to look in our direction, but I made sure not to make any eye contact. By then the kid had settled into his seat, but the mother was adamant on looking for some sucker to give up their window seat. Her plan was to get the son to sit somewhere else while she and her daughter could lay down comfortably across the 4 seats. Since that didn't work, she chose to keep glaring at me every time she got up to go to the toilet. At one point, I smiled at her and got an even worse stare. Note to parents traveling with young kids: we get that traveling with kids isn't easy. But that doesn't mean you're entitled to have other people sacrifice their comfort to make your life easier. We all reap what we sow. This one is fresh and still unfolding, but it's already hit an explosive level. Some details are intentionally vague. Context: I'm a woman in my 30s with a reasonably good corporate-type job in a field with lots of room for growth, and I'm recently back into the dating scene after a decade. I'm kind of a would-be a 10 if she lost 30 pounds looking girl, beautiful face, a bit chubby, but I never have issues getting a date. I'm not well off, but I'm stable and have a bit of spending money. I live in a large, multicultural city and my ex was an immigrant, so I'm open to dating people of any origin. If it wasn't abundantly clear, this bit about my appearance is a joke and only speaks to his failure to select an appropriate victim. I don't care what people think about how I look. What happened? A few weeks ago, I met a very charming man from a Latin American country only a couple years younger than me. Seemed very sweet, cuddly, intelligent, family-oriented, emotionally available, educated, and in a good profession back home in his country, and had a lot in common with me. Chemistry seemed amazing inside and outside the bedroom. He was honest that he was in my country on a tourist visa, but hoping to stay. I made it clear I wouldn't be able to help him with that, but we'd have a fun summer fling while he was here. If he managed to stay or come back, only then would we consider a real relationship. Then the other shoe dropped. A couple weeks and 4 dates in, during a text conversation about my work, he asked me to be his sugar mommy. I initially laughed and assumed it was a joke. He kept pushing and clearly said it wasn't. Of course, feeling insulted by this, I went off on him. He maintained it as a serious task until I hit a nerve with my complaints about how embarrassed he should be to ask me that. Then he got angry and insulted me for thinking he was serious about it. No apology for being hurtful to me. Obviously, what I did next was take screenshots and cry about it to my closest friends. I was hurt that I was fooled into thinking he liked me and that he thought I needed to pay for a man. My friends started the fuse on what happened next. One of my friends started snooping more on his online presence. Together we found about 6 different Instagram accounts that were him using different variations of his name and different photos of himself, all uploaded in batches. On Facebook, similar pattern. All very scammy and suspicious looking. He'd been foolish enough on one of his profiles, though, to follow and tag the employer that he was working for illegally on his tourist visa in my country. So I contacted another close friend in a local law enforcement agency that works with immigration. She looked up his file. He had a wife and daughter at home. I released the hounds after that. The friend who helped me investigate online made several group chats on multiple platforms with all of his family, immediate and extended, and friends. She released all the screenshots as well as a rant about how shameful it was. As I started blocking her, she added more people. I found his sister's phone number. She sent her messages there too. Everyone he knows, including his wife, knows he's unfaithful and trying to take advantage of women. 30 minutes after the online bombardment started, I got a rude message from him about how I should be smart enough to know he was joking and he doesn't need to sell himself. I didn't reply. Next step. Online immigration reporting form with all the info we found. work info, employer name and address, his home address, full name, job, photos, screenshots admitting to working. Usually these reports take months to be reviewed, if at all, but I give the file number to my law enforcement friend. 2 days later, law enforcement officers visited him at home. They found him with a phone number that was issued to a local resident. All his roommates also had numbers issued to the same person, a direct link to the employer. He received a caution for trying to scam me, a no-contact order and a flag on his immigration file that, based on his country of origin, will likely mean he can never return, as well as a strict warning to not work without authorization. His roommates also received warnings. His employer received visit next. They found significant proof that they'd been employing him illegally, as well as multiple other people. Their investigation is still ongoing, but so far they are likely to receive tens of thousands in fines or possible jail time. The guy isn't getting deported because the government would have to pay for it and proceedings take longer than his remaining visa time, but he's now upgraded from a flagged file to a multi-year ban on re-entry to my country. If he bothers me again, though, he will be deported as well. Hope he enjoys going back to his angry wife and the ridicule from everyone he knows. See ya again, never. This takes place before smartphones were omnipresent. I had a friend, we'll call him Bob, that was suspicious of his wife's social circle. One of her closest friends had been caught cheating and tried to throw her under the bus as well. Bob had no proof and things settled down for a while. Bob was an IT professional and very, very good with PCs and networks. Nearly a year later, Bob's wife is acting shady again after her high school reunion. He confides in me and we talk through some scenarios. He jokingly mentioned a keylogger. He finally asked me to just drop it and, most of all, don't tell anyone, not even your wife. A couple months pass and I'm up early, 5:36, getting ready for work. I get a Facebook Messenger notification and see that I've been sent a link from Bob, but it's a group chat. It's literally everyone we know, her family, his family, our friends, strangers. Everyone. I didn't open it. It looked like a phishing link, even though it came from him who's extremely cautious. A short while later, I get an email from Bob with some ominous, unsavory comments in the same link. It's a group email with the recipients openly copied, his wife's work, her family, her friends, his family, and other people I didn't know. I knew it was legitimate now, so I opened it. The link was to a hastily made website containing pictures and videos of his wife and another man. This wasn't hidden camera footage. It was screenshots, including video screen captures. Weeks' worth of screenshots. He had captioned each item with snarky comments and colorful names for his wife and her lover. It was an embarrassing amount of evidence. Videos of her masturbating with her lover. Chat logs about how they can't wait to screw again. Solo masturbation videos of her and him. Tons of pictures. And the straw that broke the camel's back. Trash talking about her husband to her lover. Comments about how much bigger and better he was. Her efforts to stroke her lover's ego were especially hurtful. I dropped what I was doing and called him. He was drunk and combative. He had been up all night making the website and drowning in liquor. Not one good word to say about women in general. He was extremely emotional, but after some work, I convinced him to take the website down before it does irreparable damage to his marriage, their careers, and his children. As he's sobbing and logging in to remove the website, I hear loud yelling as she bursts into the room. A screaming match ensues, and there's nothing I can do to pull him back. Apparently, her mother or sister saw the page, blew up her phone until she woke up and answered. She saw the website and went on the offensive. The phone call drops after 30 seconds of her screaming while Bob is calling her a whore, and I can't contact him again. The website was still up for the rest of the day, and he was kind enough to put a view counter on it. Hundreds of people watched her masturbating with a married former classmate. Bob had done his homework. He installed a keylogger that records the whole screen. When he was out, she would log into the PC and her Facebook and play with her boyfriend. Bob had found her lover, his family, his wife's family, his job, etc., etc. All these people were included in the Facebook and email groups. I do not know what became of her lover and his marriage, but I do know what happened to Bob's life. His wife was desperate to make amends. She tried and offered everything. In the end, it was her comments about her lover and his prowess that were her undoing. Bob tried to take her back, even after all his friends and family had seen her naked and cheating. But he couldn't get over the comments about his manhood. Bob eventually left her, gained about 100 lbs, and then finally moved as far away as possible and became a horrible human being. I have no idea what he's doing now, as he went scorched earth with most friendships in his family. She's gross and has a face shaped like a bowling ball now. Line forms at the rear. To give some context, on Christmas, there was an issue with my uncle teasing and making fun of me and my husband about moving to a different state when we bought our first house. The banter crossed a line into a belligerent argument, and it became really uncomfortable. X state has more traffic. It's smelly and ugly. You'll miss a state right away. My cousin and my mom even chimed in with the pile, on about how the state we were moving to is inferior. My parents gave us a ride home, and when I complained about it to them, they at first were like, "You know your uncle. He likes to tease," and then they began to sympathize until I called my mom out for joining in on the bullying. Then my dad got angry and began berating us and saying they had nothing to do with it, etc. And that I brought this up on Christmas and ruined Christmas. Needless to say, it was an awkward ride home. Flash forward 3 months. I am the type to kind of live and let live, especially 3 months after something happened, but my husband is not. We knew a few weeks before Easter that we would be having Easter with that side of the family, and my husband was not happy and kept saying he was dreading it. My take on it is that family can be difficult and obnoxious, but you love them and suck it up for a few holidays a year. Thursday, I ended up talking to my parents because my husband's discomfort was apparent. They empathized and then offered to talk to my uncle for me. I decided to handle it on my own by approaching my aunt, his wife, since she's a bit more reasonable. She coldly said she is sorry I felt this way, but since she was not the perpetrator, she does not understand why I am coming to her. So then I contacted my uncle to explain how we felt, who took 48 hours to respond and ended up saying it was just a joke. At this point, we had told my parents that we would be getting there, Saturday, later than they had asked, 4-0 instead of 2-0, because my husband was so upset. We also told them we would not be coming for Easter because of the hostile environment. The original plan was we were celebrating a mini Easter with my brother on Saturday, sleeping over and having Easter breakfast and then dinner with the dreaded uncle and his family. After my brother left Saturday evening, I told my parents we were leaving too. My mom started to cry because she thought we were staying to have breakfast. I sent my husband out to go get the car and calmly explained that it has been a difficult time emotionally. And my father got angry and said it has been a difficult time for them because my mom had had surgery 2 weeks ago and that I am being selfish. I became uncomfortable, and then he told me, in kinda a threatening voice, I had crossed a line by refusing to spend time with them on a major holiday. I ended up going out to the car and talking to my husband for a few hours to decide what to do. My husband is fuming and saying my father is acting out of line and causing me duress. We ended up having a huge argument because I told my husband about all the guilt I have and that I don't want to speak up or cause drama on a major holiday just like I did on Christmas. He said they were the ones causing issues, not me for standing up for us. We decided to create a united front and stay over for Easter breakfast, but my husband very clearly did not want to be there. My father and husband were not talking to each other. For further context, there is a long history of my husband butting heads with my family. We had a lot of issues during wedding planning and COVID wedding rescheduling from 2019, 2022. My parents had said multiple things that made my husband and I feel ostracized and like we were causing problems. One example in 2019, my mom did not understand why my husband had 2 Passover Seders, he is Jewish, while they only celebrate Easter once. She jokingly said, "What are you, turning into Mrs. Leibowitz?" which is not my husband's last name, but I guess was the most stereotypical Jewish name she could think of. This caused a huge blow-up fight and a rift between me and my parents. They also kept her in the wedding planning saying Dejater is the bride, so she gets final say with planning, and kept implying I was more important than my then-fiancé. Another more recent issue, Christmas 2022, my brother and sister-in-law were sick with a stomach bug. A few days later, my mom scheduled a make-up Christmas with them, but my husband thought they might still be contagious, so we declined the invitation. My mom called me upset and said I ruined Christmas. On my parents' side, they have never been huge fans of my husband's because he has a temper and has a tendency of letting things get to him and yelling when we have an argument. My parents have always felt that his temper is a problem. They have been there when he made me cry during particularly bad arguments. and that he tends to stir the crap. My mom tries really hard to keep the peace. I keep the status quo, while my dad does not hide that he feels my husband is disrespectful, and has even said so to his face. I have felt caught in the middle for 5+ years, and even after years of therapy, couples therapy, journaling, and trying to work on myself, my instinct is to not cause drama with my family. I felt so guilty for leaving Easter after breakfast with less than 24 hours notice of our plans, and my husband feels I don't have his back. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.